together.
It's also very possible to say, what are common things that you see on somebody who has had any, when a parent says, well, can you tell me this, any identifying features? Scars,
birthmarks,
moles, and birthmarks.
Yeah.
These are the three go-tos, and you can say, well, there was that birthmark, and they say nothing. You go, wait, no, it wasn't a birthmark. Was it a mole?
Right. So there are ways.
Wait, was it a scar? Oh, right. A scar.
So there are ways for him to have gamed the system, but again, he didn't want the money. So it's like, to what end?
Well,
is
exactly.
He gaming the system?
Let's go back to Hank. Let's go back to Henry for a second.
It's totally different.
Oh no, I'm not saying it's the same thing, but I'm saying that somebody can actually be totally full of it.
Absolutely.
As Henry was.
It's totally different to... anyway, it doesn't really matter. The whole thing here is that it might have been true that she was in Orlando for a while. The reason that also gives this a little bit of steam is that when Sue did track her there, after talking to Paul Branch and kind of connected with some people, because we talked about did this like countrywide tour, Sue, over the years, trying to track Amy and the Outlaws, I guess. She questioned a ton of people in Orlando and kind of the surrounding area, and she actually found a convenience store manager who remembered seeing Amy, or at least a young woman, being escorted by at least 2 bikers on many occasions. The manager remembered one detail about this young woman, and that detail was that she always bought vegetarian vegetable soup, which is an important little factoid because you may remember that Amy was a dedicated vegetarian. The convenience store manager said she was never alone. She always had at least a couple people with her. She was always well guarded, blah, 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 blah. Whether or not the Unsolved Mysteries episode, as mentioned about this case, they make a big deal about this and the Orlando lead, and Sue's book makes a big deal about the Outlaws thing.
One of the questions I have about this, and you guys maybe can answer this, is that I go to convenience stores, but I'm always there to buy like beer and chips. And so I have no idea if convenience stores even sell soup. Do they?
Yeah,
they do.
It depends on if it's not a chain convenience store. So if we roll back the clock 20, 30 years, you could go down to the whatever Quickie Mart. It was much. Don't give me that look, Devin. It was much more prevalent back in the day.
Like a mom and pop shop.
Yeah, the mom and pop kind of.
I'm giving you that look because literally every convenience store I've ever been in my entire life has always had at least a couple different cans of soup on the shelf.
Oh no, I go to the 7-Eleven by my house.
Well, the 7-Eleven by your house is crappy.
Chips. Well, that's
because the 7-Eleven. I mean, the 7-Eleven by my old house used to have like 5 or 6 different kinds of soup.
Okay.
Brands and etc.
I've only seen it on the kind of the mom and pop shops.
The reason that it was interesting was, at least, again, on the Unsolved Mysteries episode of this, they re-interviewed the convenience store clerk, and she said, the girl asked me if we had vegetarian soup.
Now,
that at one point the woman said, we don't, but then got more.
I find that interesting because in other reporting, she's always described as, in this whole biker theory thing, she was always docile and quiet, and there's, these hints that maybe somebody cut her tongue out. So I find that's very opposite of
I think the sense that I got, at least again from the convenience store clerk was like, she like very timidly said like, do you have this or whatever. I mean, maybe, again, we just like, this is...
we don't know because it's such a... mishmash is the word I'm going to use. Yeah. There's so many conflicting accounts, especially in the quote-unquote biker angle.
Well, I got to tell you, too, that going around, say, Orlando and showing Amy's picture and stuff like that, I have no... you can always contaminate your witnesses, too, by just saying stuff. Did you ever see this woman? She might have been with some bikers, some really scary biker guys, and she was a vegetarian, and then, that kind of thing. So you don't really know how the quality of the interrogation that was going on here.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Yeah, and also I kind of question anybody's memory if they think, like, how long had it been? Like 10 years, 5 years since this clerk had seen her?
Yeah, a couple of years probably at least.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to imagine, seriously, unless you got a photographic memory.
Yeah, so I think the at least the kidnapped biker gang theory is kind of like a red herring.
Kidnapped and held forever.
Yeah.
I could totally see some other theory, but the problem I have with this theory is that, and the reason I think somebody just kidnapped her and killed her probably, is that, they would have held her for decades, and it's like, in all that time, she would definitely have had opportunities to get away, or to at least pick up a phone and call the police or something.
Well, I think that is kind of what the interview with the other biker gangs and the other women who were old ladies really speaks to, is that that's a thing. I mean, you can brainwash a person or intimidate them into feeling like they have no other option but to make you happy. And particularly if it is true that she was with Paul Branch for a while and he got her really, really beat up, it's, and especially if her tongue had actually been cut out or anything like that, it's not, it's, you just like get victimized. You can get so victimized that you just lose your will or even thought.
Using the term brainwash is kind of a slippery slope, because
like a Stockholm.
That's hard to. Well, brainwash is hard to actually categorically say this is what it is.
Okay.
But
that's fair.
An actual tactic that people that are stealing people to put them into situations of sexual slavery do is they hook them on drugs. Once you make somebody an addict and you are the only source of their deal, they become very compliant and they do what you say when you say, and they don't fight back because they need their fix.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So I agree. I'm still
long term.
I
personally think the long term theory is just as viable as somebody stole her and shipped her overseas to be a slave in another country.
I would find that more believable.
That's pretty far-fetched.
Yeah.
That's not that far-fetched.
I do have a sub-theory on the Outlaws biker gang thing, and that is that it's possible that she had been picked up for a party. I mean, if it was bike week, she's wearing a short little denim skirt and heels. She's 17. She's a pretty good-looking young lady walking down the side of the highway. A biker pulls over and says, "Hey, baby, you want to go party?"
Yeah, maybe.
And she thinks, "Okay, sure."
Yeah.
Whatever, and gets on the back of a bike, because there were some reports, again, however tainted, that she was seen on the back of a motorcycle. And, they parked for the night, partied, something bad happened to her there, and she's now, feeding the gate, or was then feeding the gators. And
alligators eat people?
Oh, believe it or not.
I thought they only lived in sewers.
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah. But you just keep believing that, Steve. But I mean,
why I don't go in the sewer. Okay?
I think that's possible, that something kind of unfortunate like that happened.
That's more plausible, I think. Yeah.
That.
I think that's entirely possible. Or there's the random serial killer theory.
Yeah. So there's one final theory here, and that's the tan truck /Jeep /van guy, because there were a number of reports initially, not after the fact, just initially during the initial search. People said, "Oh yeah, I think I saw somebody who looked like Amy in a tan truck or van or Jeep, along Main Highway, along that route, or getting in that, or whatever, somehow associated with something like that." And the only reason that gives me even a little bit of pause is, you remember we talked about the camera that was found.
Well,
they developed the film, which you might have assumed. You were probably actually yelling, what did they do with the film? And we were frustrating you.
They opened the camera up and they said, "What's this?" And they just pulled it out.
And just pulled it out like a toddler with like a tape. Yeah. No, they developed it, and
that's good.
Most of it was just way overexposed and like totally unidentifiable, whatever. But there was one picture that they could identify, which was still pretty overexposed, but it was an overexposed picture of a tan truck against like a wall. And I have heard through, again, I don't know what the reporting really is, that maybe Hank Blair had a truck that looked kind of like that.
I've heard that story.
Or van that looked kind of like that.
Yeah, that he had one. Although actually a lot of people had vans. A lot of people still do.
Yeah, or trucks or Jeeps.
Do either of you know whatever became of the film, from that roll of film? And here's my reason for asking is that
Technology.
you
maybe.
can scan negatives and do some amazing stuff.
Maybe.
That, I mean, I was digging around in my attic. This was a couple of years back, and I found a bunch of old negatives. And some of them you could tell were people, and some you couldn't really tell what the hell they were. And if you put them into a film scanner and then you run them through the gamut, you can pull an amazing amount of it and make exceptional. You can see what there was because you can dial it back. There's a tonal control that you get digitally that you didn't get from analog film processing.
I don't know. The thing about it is you would think that the film would still be somewhere, and it does seem to get lost quite often.
It does, and film degrades. I mean, if it wasn't stored properly,
Well, yeah, that's the hard part.
it could have just degraded. Somebody could have thought, well, there's no way that this is going to be relevant. I
Well,
mean,
if anybody who's connected to it knows and they find that frickin' film, you need to get it to somebody who can scan it properly.
us.
Yeah.
Send it to us. We'll solve the case
Yeah.
Okay.
with film.
You
will.
I'll buy. Yeah, we got the money. I'll buy a film scanner.
Yeah.
I've always wanted one.
Right?
Yeah, I love
Fine.
film scanners.
We'll start a Kickstarter. It'll be great.
That's-
No, I mean,
right.
that is the only other kind of theory that's out there is that it
Actually,
just had something to do with this.
There is one other theory.
Okay.
Really?
Okay, yeah.
Is it Chupacabra?
No.
Is it aliens?
No, actually, it's not.
Is it
It is. Are you ready?
Yes.
Pyramids?
No. The Rapture. And
She was the only one that
who
was worthy.
qualified.
You're right.
Yeah. That's what I think it was.
That's probably true.
Yeah, I think it was the Rapture.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm down.
I got to be honest with you. This is one of the few times where I'm going to say none of the theories.
Why?
Well, what do you think happened to her?
I mean, I don't think that it was the bikers. I don't think that it was any of the people who were described. Like, I mean, Van Guy is maybe the only thing, because I literally think that some unknown person picked her up, whether of her own volition or not, and drove away with her, and she is probably in a shallow grave
Oh
somewhere.
no, that's what I think happened most likely. Is that what it? But
And which is
and
horrible. I mean, thankfully Sue doesn't have to hear us say that.
Yeah, but and as far as the van, I mean, that picture might have been taken some other day. I mean, who knows?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we don't know when
Yeah.
the camera disappeared. If it disappeared with her, if it disappeared weeks or even months earlier.
But
I mean,
but I'm with Steve on that. I think it most likely. I mean, again, there's the whole picked up, taken to a party, killed, disposed of. That's possible too.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm thinking most likely it was just some freak who picked her up and murdered her, and she's tossed her in the swamp somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I just have to agree. I think, unfortunately, again, with a lot of these disappearances, the most merciful thing is that person, maybe it was a really terrifying couple of hours after they got kidnapped, but really, honestly, I just often hope that
Because that's better than the years of slavery.
decades.
Yeah.
Decades of literal torture, right? I mean, so, and I just tend to think if they weren't found, it's really likely, especially this long, that she just got killed one way or another within a couple days, if not a couple hours. And
one of the things I'm curious about is when did the Unsolved Mysteries segment air?
it was in the 90s at some point.
Okay, and so
I guess it had to have been like
There's still Robert Stack.
It was between when Ned died, because Ned had passed away already.
Okay, so
and when Sue died, and she died in the
died
late
like-
90s, I think.
So and I'm sure those things usually touch off a whole avalanche of tips.
Yeah, I don't think there were no updates or anything on
Yeah, so that's one
But
of
they
the.
broadcast anyway.
But that's another
Yeah.
reason that I think, and that I have not heard of any sort of information being dislodged by the
Exactly.
airing of that episode.
Yeah, I mean,
And,
I think
you
if
know,
she were
a lot of
alive,
people would have seen her. A lot of bikers would have seen her, and other
Yeah.
people would have seen her if
Yeah.
she'd been held captive for all
Yeah.
those decades.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, I think she's been dead for a long, long time.
Since about 1974,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if you want to see some of the research that we did for this case, or if you want to take a look at that episode list we talked about that keeps us sane, kind of, or you want links to merch, because we've got shirts and mugs and some other things too.
Other swag.
Yeah. You can find all those things on our website. That website is thinkingsidewayspodcast.com. If you want to interact with us in any kind of social way, don't do that. That's creepy.
Yeah, call Devin on the phone
Hate
and
it.
just don't say anything.
Please don't do that. No, you can find us on actually all of the social medias at this point. You can find us on Twitter, where we're Thinking Sideways. You can find us on Reddit, where our subreddit is Thinking Sideways. You can find us on Facebook, where we've got a group and a page. So like the group, like the page, join the group. You have to answer 2 questions. They're super easy.
Yeah.
Just make sure you answer them
Correctly.
It doesn't even have to be that correct.
I don't know. There's been some obviously not correct answers.
Fair enough.
Okay, what is it, like yes and maybe? Is that what
It's yes and Thursday.
Oh, okay. Easy then.
It's easy, yeah.
Okay.
And yet people get it wrong.
Oh yeah, they get them real wrong. It's kind of fun actually to see some of the answers. Anyway, we also have an Instagram, and that is Thinking Sideways Podcast, not Thinking Sideways.
Yeah, not those other people.
No.
That call themselves, lawsuit. You thinking, guys?
Yeah,
I'm
thinking.
Yeah.
Trademark infringement.
Yeah, I think so. But anyway, yeah.
Not
so
that they had it
Thinking
first or
Sideways.
anything.
Yeah.
It's Thinking Sideways
We made it better.
Podcast.
Yeah.
You can also send us an email. The email address is thinkingsidewayspodcast@gmail.com. That's great for feedback of any kind. And you can find us pretty much anywhere where you're streaming us. You know where you find us.
Stitcher.
Make
That's
sure
a big
to
one. Yeah.
make sure to rate and review and do all those fun things. And all of that having been said, I think we're gonna go ahead and get on out of here.
Oh.
I'm gonna drink a lot to feel less depressed about this story.
Oh,
Vroom
well,
vroom.
Yeah. Yeah, really. Zoom zoom. Next week, kids. Bye.
Bye.
See you in Sturgis. Thinking Sideways is not brought to you by a mongoose playing the ukulele. Instead, it's supported by the generous donations of our listeners on Patreon. Visit patreon.com/thinkingsideways to learn more. And thanks.
Thinking Sideways.
I don't understand.
Does not compute.
You never know.
Insufficient data to formulate a reply.
Stories of things we simply don't know the answer to.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Thinking Sideways, the podcast. I am Devin, joined as always by
Joe.
And Steve.
We're going to talk about a mystery today, unlike most days. We're going to talk about the story of Andrew Gosden, who's a missing teenager. Well, he's not a teenager anymore, but... and before we get too far into it, because I'm really good at forgetting, this was a suggestion from, I think, Katrina or Katarina. I'm sorry, I don't know which one it is.
Yeah.
But thanks for suggesting it.
Both of them.
Both of them.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
And I know we've gotten suggestions for this in between the time that she suggested it, but I didn't write any of the other names down apparently.
Ah, damn it.
I know. Andrew Gosden was a normal 14-year-old guy. He was a very bright young man, described as quite the math genius, or a quiet math genius, whichever.
Yeah.
Yeah. He had a 100% attendance record for school.
Except for this one time.
Well, he had won a number of national math competitions, and he was the kind of kid who would leave a note pretty much if he just went around the corner. Neither of you guys were kids like that, right?
No.
I was a kid like that. I would leave a note for my parents if I left for any reason.
Yeah, I had to, but I usually had somebody at home, so it was easy.
Yeah. He was also really into heavy metal, and that's the description you'll hear about him. That's it.
Yeah, that's one of the frustrating things about this case is I don't really feel like I know much about Andrew.
I agree.
You
No,
know?
there's a very patent, what's the word I'm trying to say? Very pat description of him that is out there, and it is almost verbatim these 4 or 5 lines.
When so in the development marketing world, we call that a boilerplate.
Boiler?
A boilerplate.
Boilerplate, yes, you're right.
Where it's just 3 lines about this thing.
Yep,
That's what this is,
yes.
and it's the only information that I can really find about this.
I know.
But I don't even know if he had friends. I mean, you think they would have.
I have no idea. I would
interviewed
assume
friends?
so, but I don't know.
Probably. Oh.
On the morning of Friday, September 14th, 2007, Andrew woke up a bit late and was grumpy, and his mom thought that was kind of odd. He was usually kind of awake on time and ready for school. But he got dressed in his uniform anyway, put his backpack on, and left for school with his ticket.